On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Jai Prakash. He is the head of insights and data engineering at Pella Corporation. We're going to be talking about the evolution of XOps. We're going to be talking a little bit of a journey of where XOps has come from, the need, building a center of excellence, upskilling people, and innovations at the core. Like if you're a software company, you already might be deep into XOps, especially MLOps. If you're a company that's implementing some of these solutions, this might be new to you. So hopefully there is a good takeaway from everybody out there. Jai, thanks for coming on the show and sharing.
Thanks, Amir. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. Before we start, Pella Corporation, what do you guys do?
Pella Corporation is almost 100 years old next year. And I think at the core of it, it's innovation for them that has helped them to survive. And that's what we're talking about also today. But Pella Corporation is one of the largest manufacturers of windows and doors. It's very similar to the golden arch that you see from McDonald's. It's the golden window. You would see the symbol right across. That's Pella Corporation.
That's really cool. All right. Well, that's a good way of putting it. 100-year-old company. Obviously, we're talking about XOps. So we're talking about a company that does Windows, right? I mean, obviously, you guys have been around for 100 years. And when you first mentioned this, I was like, why does a window company need XOps? Where's the need for this? Because, Windows are pretty, manufacturing oriented. I look out one, but outside of that, I don't know where the tech comes from. I guess maybe help us understand, we're going to talk about XOps, obviously, but just the need and a little bit of the backstory of why a company like Pella is going to journey into that world and kind of where you guys are at technologically.
I think at Pella in the last couple of years, there's been a rapid change in terms of how you want to approach the company, because from a management perspective, all the way from the top, there's a very aggressive growth pattern that they've put in place. And at the heart of all of that is quality. And that's where Pella believes that, driving the quality and continuous focus on that and the customer is where it'll really help us to achieve goals in terms of our growth strategy. And that's where all of the innovation, all of the technology also flows from in terms of, why we need to do it and the need for, AI and computer vision and all of those advanced analytics that come into play in terms of improving our manufacturing process, improving our data processes, capturing the data, seeing what can be possible. So I think at the heart of all of that, that's where, we have all of these innovations and new systems coming in.
Maybe connect the dots for me when we're thinking about these type of innovations, and I could have some ideas of where this is going to be used. But when we're talking about innovation and you're talking about needing XOps, obviously we're talking somewhat in relation to AI, Gen AI, ML. Where does the technology slipstream? What areas, not necessarily what the technology is, but what areas does technology impact Pella at the more advanced side?
So if you look at a manufacturing process, right, that's where a lot of that innovation is actually being driven in from. We know of the classic, in sales, marketing, they're all commoditized models already, but it's that manufacturing at the plant level where we can see a lot of innovation come through, especially in terms of traditional assembly line itself, walking around with headsets rather than having to walk with manuals and stuff like that. If you look at a typical door or a window, it has about 20,000 components that go into it. And for an assembler to understand all of that and to quickly ramp up and understand what it is, it does take time. And that's where we have used a lot of technology to augment, what the assembler can do on the flow and how we can speed up the training process and the quality that comes in turn with that.
I love when I talk to somebody who's at a company that's been around, a legacy company. I find it's awesome because you start talking to them and you start realizing where they're applying the technology and the depth at which technology and innovation is kind of spreading through. And I think you kind of articulated that. And I guess, as we're kind of talking about innovation at the core, 100-year-old company transforming, there's a lot of, I guess, legacy that exists within older companies, older processes. When you're thinking about implementing a newer technology, something that's going to help on the manufacturing side or the supply chain side, there's a lot of moving parts, right? You got the legacy stuff that's there. You want to bring in the modern stuff, and being one of the leading window manufacturers, you really can't slip up because there's a huge supply chain of people post delivery that exists. That's going to impact thousands and thousands of people. When you're looking at that type of implementation of a technology, and we're talking about more advanced technologies into like maybe AI and ML. How do you guys start evaluating what low-hanging fruit is? How do you start evaluating where you guys might think, hey, this is going to give us an advantage?
In every company, especially in mature companies I've worked with in previously, and manufacturing companies in particular, as you said, there's a lot of tribal knowledge, there's a lot of legacy, and there's a lot of resistance to change traditionally. And I think one of the advantages that at Pella that I've seen is that it's been more of a bottom-up process in terms of involving people right from the scratch in terms of the ideas itself. Hey, what can be improved? You take the Kanban process and then implement that to the shop flow, and you first show them the art of possible, right? And once you educate the people who are actually going to be impacted on what's possible, and then ask them to drive what ideas would be useful, what can we do out of this. And that's how most of the ideas actually got generated in terms of the learning abilities, the computer vision, and all of that stuff. These ideas actually came in from the shop flow, and it's just the technology teams are helping to augment and implement that process for us. And working with different partners too has also helped out here to bring some of those actions to scale faster, rather than putting in some POCs and then seeing whether it works or not. We're going in with a much more, hey, this has to work. It's either now or you're going to be left out from the competition, right? So it's that attitude, as well as the participative attitude, that has really helped Pella to keep driving us in terms of where we are trying to get to, because it is going to happen very soon. If not now, it's going to happen a few years later, and probably Pella may not exist for that because of the rapid change that's happening here. So I think even traditionally too, Pella has already taken a lot of stand in terms of technology, from how they want to innovate and where they want to go. So there's a lot of things happening in this space, and I think we have the right executive presence, we have the right change attitude from the plants, and then we are trying to build our skill sets as we go along. So it's quite a bit of a journey, but we need to start somewhere, and I think it's happening now.
Interesting. Last question before I know I want to jump into talking about the DataOps and the XOps side. And we can use Tesla as an example because it's something most people in the technical field probably can relate to. We can use mattresses where industries, I guess Tesla had a lot of innovation, but mattresses, we had a lot of legacy companies come under fire because somebody realized that they can compress a mattress that's foam into a box and ship it. I mean, it disrupted the whole industry, and you see the reaction by the older brands, and they've managed to make adjustments. I don't know enough to say they've caught up or not, but just thinking about a company like yours, you guys make windows. There's probably somebody out there in the startup space thinking, there's a lot of windows being sold. What if I can manufacture it more efficiently so it's cheaper with a more technical first kind of forward thinking? So it's interesting everything you're saying about you guys are trying to realize that disruption, even at a very traditional manufacturing environment, could be very possible.
Absolutely. I think recently we were witness to one of the dramatic changes, like what you mentioned. Usually a window takes, 4 or 5 installers to come and put that window in place. Recently, Pella rolled out an industry first. We called it the Ready Set. It requires just one person to come in there and fix that window in a very short time and just gets away from there. And it happens like a plug and play, a classic plug and play, rather than, a lot of people coming in, quality issues, damages, and all of that was gone. Still a lot of yet to come in place.
Yeah. I had somebody on with the dental industry. We were talking about how they make implants differently. And you're telling me they've gone from, window installing 4 or 5 people to one person just putting up a window. I mean, that's pretty interesting because that is massive efficiency. I'm going to bring it back. I love legacy businesses and in technology. I might have to do a whole series on that because I find it fascinating. But let's talk about you guys, and let's talk about the technology. You've already laid the ground work for our topic. And I guess when we're talking about XOps, and obviously DevOps, we've had system admin, DevOps, the evolution to DataOps to MLOps is all happening. Kind of talk to us about you guys in the frame of reference of what you're talking about, that innovation of the core and the need to have the right XOps infrastructure and setup for the company to execute.
So this is a very recent journey for us, and we're still on the way to getting up there. But we've sort of built that vision, and we've been sharing that vision, so that everybody lines up in that journey as we're going along. And as I said, about from a manufacturing space, we have a lot of sensor information that we're putting in on the shop flows, and then we have a lot of third parties coming in to implement some of the OEM tools that's needed to put into action some of those quality inspections, as well as at the assembly line what was needed there, from the cameras to the sensors to other information, the audio devices and everything. And all of that is also streaming data, right? So there's a ton of data that's actually flowing into the system, and then now we need to be able to manage that. And it's not just the classic data, you have multi-modal data coming in. And Pella's not traditionally used to, managing all of that data in different formats. Yeah, we have a classic, enterprise data warehouse. We get all of our information from ERPs and other systems, but now it's a completely different game. So that's when, we need to start stepping up and seeing, hey, how do I manage this data and how do I utilize this data? Right. So it's a multi-step process that we have put in place. First is, moving from on-prem to cloud. That's the first traditional step that has happened, and we are good with that. The next step is, how do I make my processes more efficient? And how do I start, making other teams being more efficient? So we started with a safe agile process to help us within this. And as we're getting this team along, there's a lot of participation from different businesses saying, hey, we need to have these areas, focus on analytics on there. There's another team that asks for another set of analytics. So many different teams are being formed out here. So now it's, you don't have the staff to put all of that together. So we need to bring in a lot of external third-party consultants and other teams to bring all of those practices in. Now that means too many different processes are going to kick in, and that makes it hard for us to start working out. So that's where, DataOps process was also starting to build itself, where we started as one core shared services team right now, which is building in the best practices for a DataOps team, which includes, how do we ingest the data from, a metadata-driven data model for data ingestion, then building the right data enterprise data model, keeping every team, hey, this is how we need to model our data, keeping our enterprise perspective in view, and guiding the teams out. If there's a lack of resources across the different data product teams, then we augment that with this data ops shared team. Eventually, the idea is that, every team would be a data ops team, and this team would start evolving itself into a COE model as we go along. But also using data ops as a strong foundation, we start building out on the next level of maturity, which would bring into MLOps, model ops, and eventually AIOps. But 3 to 5 years from now, probably we'll just have the AIOps, because that encompasses all of these pieces in together there too. So that's where we're working towards. And it's a multi-year process that we're going to kick in. We are still in the first 6 months of it, so very, very at an infant stage here, but that's our vision going along here.
Interesting. I guess, as you guys are evolving down the XOps maturity curve, there are these other pieces that you're putting in. How far in advance will you start looking at that? Because some of these skills are hard to find. Some of these skills are new, and you need to find the right people who can actually either upskill or be hired into the right environment. How far ahead, like you mentioned, it's, let's say 3 to 5 years. I mean, that is a long time, but it's also not a long time. So I was kind of curious.
So within the DI team, the leadership, we are heavily focused on understanding what that future need is. We look at our current resources, and we need to think about how do we upscale or retrain these resources to the future roles that's going to be. So we have sort of mapped out, hey, what my future roles are going to be, and then seeing what my current resources are, what can be trained, who can be trained, what roles can they play in the future, and where do I have the gaps. And that's where we're starting to play in terms of, do I augment for now, or do I cross-train and upskill, some of my existing teams? So that's the type of roles or discussion that we're having right now at the leadership levels, in terms of, hey, the traditional data engineering role, that's what it is now. But as we go along in the future, that's a lot of it is going to be automated. So what is that future role going to be? You have a data analyst role today, but in the future, as we go into a lot more advanced analytics and capabilities, do you still need a data analyst role, or would that transform into something else, right? And then looking at MDM, if you look at the MDM role, hey, yes, I do have MDM today in the very infant stage, not much of data quality. What would that governance and future structure look like? Can I repurpose some of my skill sets out to the future role so that it establishes that future state for us as we build along? Because it's going to be a multi-year journey.
And I guess as you're kind of seeing other areas of the company, and you're seeing some of the advanced solutions that are in place, you want to put in place, and you mentioned shared services. When you look at that roadmap, obviously it's a multi-year process. Is the center of excellence, is that going to be a core of making sure that the right pieces are in place to support that next step into AI whenever you guys are ready to take that step?
Yes, I think you got that right. The shared services team is a team now, but that would start to embed itself across the different data teams itself. So today we have a shared service data ops team, and in the future we would have multiple data ops teams, each of them using those practices that was put in place by the shared service team. And the shared service team would then become more of a COE for data ops, and making sure that, let's say we have to bring in, let's say, vector databases into picture now, or we have different type of database to come in. So this team, the COE team, would go and investigate what's needed for that, and then identify the right teams where it would fit, and give the reference, or a sort of a template or framework for the data teams as they implement different products or different analytics into what's the right model to use. And that's the same thing. We have, data science teams also in place. As they start scaling and building more and more models, then the shared service team, which was a data ops team, and now it's a COE, that would start building on the MLOps capabilities in terms of understanding, hey, how do I scale up my versions? How do I do my model versioning? How do I make sure, they are being monitored, they are being referenced, and the accuracy levels are being maintained? What do we do for all of that? And then they will pass that practice back into those different embedded data teams. So that's the progression or plan that we have in mind here.
And in the I guess the aspect of upskilling, that's always tricky, right? Because obviously you want to give your people a chance. Sometimes you need to make that professional hire because you just don't have the time, or you don't have the internal capabilities to know what you don't know, and hiring consultants is not easy, inexpensive either. When it comes to upskilling, and especially, it sounds like you have a pretty good roadmap. So it's not like this is a 6-month. You have some time. When you're looking at upskilling, obviously the team's going to be supporting some of the old, some of the new. How does that upskilling work? Is it kind of democratic and people can come to you and say, hey, I want to learn the new thing? Is it, hey, everyone's upskilling? How do you approach the upskilling in this particular dynamic?
So a lot of it is going to be on the job as we're progressing, like how we talked about, mapping our different current resources to their future, what it would be. We're also making sure we are not single-threaded in that. And because that would be a roadblock that we're hitting right now. So one of the paths that we're doing is also having all our resources being multi-threaded, right? So that helps us to also scale much better in the future. The other pieces are also putting in some fundamental trainings in for everyone. For example, everybody needs to have a basics in statistics. You need to have a basic understanding of all the different algorithms that's there. Because if you do not have that, then you may not appreciate what type of models, data models or databases or use cases that you can potentially use, because we want everyone to be an ambassador of the art of possible. So that's where we are trying to focus sort of core trainings. This is a must for everyone. And on top of it, we're also providing other opportunities based on their individual interests to areas to specialize in that they could further carry along. So those are the types of combined external, internal trainings, cross trainings within team, and external consultants coming in as they're upskilling and bringing in new skills. They're also training up the internal teams, and we're also adding up our own resources as we scale up to make sure that we are future-proofing some of these roles.
Awesome, Jay. I mean, it sounds super exciting. I know I touched on, part of this episode kind of went towards the innovation side, which I think I want to talk about. And I think you did a great job. And I'm sure we could talk more about, the journey in the XOps. And I'm sure people might have questions about kind of what you're doing. If somebody does want to reach out to you to kind of continue the discussion, what's a good way of touching base with you?
I'm pretty active on responding on LinkedIn. So I think that would be the best way to get in touch.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, make sure we include that link in to the show notes so people can find you. Again, thank you for being on. Thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Amir. Thanks for helping to showcase what we're trying to do here, and hopefully this will be helpful for other companies too, because it's an exciting journey. It's a multi-year journey. So hopefully we can see a new phase for everyone there. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for the episode. We'll be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I know we probably could have gone a little deeper in the actual DataOps and XOps side of the house. I know I probably might have to have Jay come back and kind of talk to us about that. But I thought it was fascinating about, he had mentioned to me innovation at the core of Pella. It's a 100-year-old company. You think about Windows and you start thinking about the opportunity of innovation, and it's still there. And I think he did a great job of kind of explaining to us not only where they're seeing the innovation, but also the next 3 to 5 years of how to actually get to that next level of the journey. So I think that's really impressive. I think it's awesome. We'll definitely have to have Jay come back and talk to us about how that process has been going on. The evolution of XOps there is still early stage, and I think we'll be excited to have him back. Also, like, subscribe, comment, let me know how the podcast is going for you. I'd appreciate that. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.